seeing me and watching me paint. It's one of the things I really love to do is painting in front of people and teaching art, all sorts of things. I do acrylics. I'm teaching acrylics. I do most of the dry media. I am also probably primarily a pastelist, but I also do silver point and airbrush and lots of other different things. One of the things I didn't mention to Ali is I'm also one of the Phantom Galleries artists that does the electrical boxes out there on the streets in San Jose. I've done 2 of those for the same community in the last couple of years, and they've already paid to do for a 3rd one. So depending on how it goes, I may later this year be doing a 3rd art box, and they've all been historically related sorts of things, but I may be doing a 3rd art box for them in the near future. So that whole part of San Jose will have my own art out there in the public until they decide to paint it over. It'll be fun. Really, really fun to do. Okay, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a painting that is underwater, and it's under the sea. And the way I start this off is based on whatever subject matter I have. I do what's called a color field underpainting. Now, that doesn't mean one solid color, black or blue or something like that. It means mixing up the color to get a meaningful background for the painting you're about to do. So if you're doing a beach scene, there might be, you know, the sky color blending into the sea color, blending into the wet sand color, blending into the dry sand color. So you would have these very subtle transitions of color on the canvas before you did any details at all. It would just be an abstract painting before you did anything with it at all. And then you could go any direction with a seascape. Same thing if you were doing something with rocks, or in this case with wildlife. If you get that color field thing right, you can go 100 different directions with it, and it really makes it much less frustrating for you, and you don't have to stare at blank canvas. So I want to show you something. I'll share something for you here, give you an idea, a little bigger one. This is a seascape I did just a few weeks ago. And if you take a look at this, it started out as a color field up at the top here. It was all a little bit darker blue, transitioning down to like a lighter blue and lighter blue still, and then kind of this slate color that got a little bit lighter. As you notice, as it comes down, there's more of this brown mixed in with the color because the water's getting shallow and it's bringing up some of the sand. And then that comes forward thinner and thinner, and then finally transitioning into the dry sand. So if you take away all of the details, you can still see the underpainting under that all the way down, this nice transition of color all the way down. And then everything else was brought out of the backfield of this. And so that's what I meant by you can set something up for a painting like for a beach, and that could have been something completely different. This that I'm about to show you is kind of sort of what we're going to do today. This also was done a couple weeks ago, and this is a vermilion rockfish in Deep Reef off of Monterey. And so it's all blues and oranges and so on in that area, so it's a quadratic color palette. But again, this started with this really dark, rich blue transitioning almost to a green down at the bottom, and then all of the imagery being brought out of it. But if you look past it, you can still see the color field underneath. And that's what I want to show you today too. You want to be able to take a look at a small canvas or a big canvas like that, and when you're done with the color field, you should be able to hang it on the wall as an abstract all by itself. Don't have to do another thing for people to say, hey, I kind of like that just the way it is. That's kind of where you want to be. So today I've started this one, and I use 5 or 6 different colors. I'll move this just a little closer so you can see this. There are 5 or 6 different colors in here. So you can almost see imagery and rock in this too. They're painted almost like with a cross-hatch stroke. So it's not flat and reflective. There's a lot of stuff going on in here already, and it actually helps to bring some of the imagery out of the background. And I used I think cerulean blue and green and a little bit of Mars black and a tiny bit of cadmium red deep to get that color. Now, I did have some left over, so I'm going to give you a tip. Anytime any of you mix up a lot of acrylic and you have a little bit left over, you don't have any good way to store it, you put it on a paper palette like this, mist it a little bit with a squirter bottle, just a little mister bottle like you use for the garden, mist it like that, then fold this in half, like so, slide it into a Ziploc bag. It'll stay wet for 3 or 4 days. It's easy. And you don't have to lose. Mixed it up. Do it on a paper palette. You can use wax. Paper too in a pinch. Fold it over and stick it. So now what I'll do, since we've got the seahorse sketched in here and the background in here, some rock and some coral. I'm going to put down a little bit of Payne's Gray, and let's see here, a little bit of cerulean, and my favorite blue in the whole world, manganese blue. Take a little palette knife. What I like about this particular camera where it shows I can actually mix it up and you can see the color I'm mixing ahead of time. And so there's this really nice, rich blue color. And I'm using, this is probably a number 6 round. And I'm going to start bringing in just where the edge of the coral is here, and I'm going to be blending it into the background. So there's going to be some of it that's going to be darker, some of it's going to be lighter. And if you just vary the pressure on the brush, you're going to get different values and different edges. Notice where I'm holding the brush to, halfway back, always at least halfway back, or even at the end, not like this. This is really hard to control, believe it or not, and you actually end up putting too much brush and gets heavy-handed and gets streaks and stuff in it too. So there's actually a lot more control if you hold it in the back like this and let the brush do the work. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Now, as this goes down, I can add darker areas in later. I can add highlights into this, but this is going to delineate the next layer of coral as it comes forward. And off into the background, there's like a cave back there. I may even do a lighter version of that by maybe mixing in some zinc white. But right now, this is fine. This color that I'm using is working really well. I can paint off to the side here so you can see how the color's going down. You can see from your viewpoint here how some of the color is going on very thick, and others I'm wiping the paint thinner and blending it together, leaving some of the dark area underneath there, kind of like dry brushing. It's called scumbling, when you actually let some of the existing color peek through the color that you're putting down, so I don't lose all that wonderful, nice, rich, dark color. Now let's say I screw up and I put some color where it's not supposed to be. Remember, I have that paper palette of background color folded over down there underneath in a Ziploc bag that's nice and wet, so I can correct it if I make a mistake. I have the exact same background color. So that's something else. If you're mixing up that particular background color, mix up enough. If you have it left over, save it, because at the very end, when you're doing your finishing touches, you want to be able to go ahead and put in your touch-ups, cover up maybe places where you goofed up, and we all goof up.
Hey, Jeff?
Yes.
Is it possible to move the canvas a little closer or have the camera closer? It's just a little hard to see.
Yeah, I can probably move the camera closer. Let's see if this. Is that any closer for you at all? You see it better?
It's a little bit closer. Yeah, I think the angle is better. There's less glare on the black canvas.
How's that?
Oh, that's better.
Better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, let me move it over here too. Good. That's a little better. You get
Much
better, right?
better.
The angle
Much
and the
better.
glare. Yep. Okay. It's funny, for my drawing classes, I actually have a little tabaret that I put right here, so it's like almost on top of the computer. So the drawing pad's really easy to see. But the canvas is just trying to get the right angle for that, so thank you for that. And go ahead now, next time leave the camera right where it is now. Now there is going to be some texture. There's going to be lighter areas in here. And what I'll do is I'm going to get zinc white mixed in with this to do some of the highlights. Now zinc white is also called soft mixing white or mixing white. But basically what it is a transparent white that does not have, excuse me, does not have as much pigment as titanium white does. Titanium white is a very, very strong white paint, and it covers things very, very quickly. If you were to do a drawdown and mix up some color and take any color you want and mix some titanium white into it, it'll be chalky and really white very, very quickly. Whereas zinc white, you can get 4, 5, 6 value layers before you get to the same chalkiness on the first layer with the titanium white. Just need a little bit. So this is mixing white. So it's not going to completely and again, by varying the pressure, I can have different areas that are very white looking, but others that I can have more blue in. Wow, it's starting to look pretty cool. Good. And again, I'm letting some of that nice, deep, rich color show through underneath. So I don't want to completely lose it and just cover it up. And I can add in more of the mixing white if I want some layers that are a little whiter. Now, normally I would go, the way I like to work is I like to go back to front, top to bottom, dark to light, all the way into the front. So I would do the background, the middle ground, and probably the seahorse would be the last thing that I'm going to do. But I'm going to do a little bit of the seahorse for you in just a minute, as soon as I get the area immediately around this painted. Now, if you look, one of the reasons I chose these colors is the seahorse that I've got is got a lot of reddish browns and red yellows and so on. So it's very warm looking. So against this pale blue, it's really going to pop. It's a complementary color, and so it's really, really going to pop.
Jeff, are you mixing with water?
I haven't dipped my brush in water in quite a bit, but yes, there's a water bucket over here. And Every so often, I will go ahead and dip just the top third of the brush in there. You don't need the entire brush completely soaked with water, and you don't need to cover the entire brush with paint either. You just want to use about the top third of the bristle when you're doing that. That way you don't get paint up into the ferrules where it can dry and get hard. But the other thing is, a lot of times you cover the entire brush with paint, and this has happened to me a gazillion times. I've ruined enough paintings this way. You get a glop of paint that's right at the ferrule, and you're dipping water in it, and pretty soon it gets runny enough. You're sitting there, let's say you're painting this nice light area, and all of a sudden, bloop, this bright blue drop falls right in the middle of it, or it spatters or something, and you're trying to have to rub it off or wipe it out, and then you mess up the color that's beneath it. So yeah, just the top third of the brush is good. When you're putting the color in there, you can take a look at this. It's just top third of this. It's got the color on it. Also make sure that I've got a little dabbing. It's just a folded up shop towel over here. When you're dipping your brush, sometimes you can get a little heavy-handed, get too much water up in here. And when there's too much water up in the brush, when you go to paint, it can run down onto your painting and leave a little wet streak. You may not notice it at first, but if you let that wet streak dry and then you paint over it, it doesn't make any difference how much paint you're going to put on there. You're still going to have little streaks that are going to show up when the painting is angled just the right way. And you're going to look at it and go, what the heck is that? I didn't put those in there. And it's because there were some drips that were allowed to dry. And so they're basically like little plastic strips that are in there that you're trying to paint over. And you won't. You're just putting more stuff on top of it, so it's never going to go away. And again, it's something, one of those things that I screwed up enough myself, so I want to pass them on to you to try not to do that, because you can lose a painting that way. And I'm taking some of the color on the seahorse too, and I'm moving some of that background color right in over the edge of the seahorse a little bit. And when I go to paint the seahorse in, it's coming in just a little bit past where that white line is. When I actually go to paint in the seahorse, I can make the edge a little bit further out. And so it's going to cover up the edge of the blue that's there. And that way it doesn't look cookie cutterish. You're not painting right up to the edge. It actually looks better if you come in the color onto the object a little bit, and then when you paint the object in, you overlap it, and then it doesn't look like it's cut out or painted right up to it. It looks like it belongs there. Now the pencil that I used is a white all Stabilo pencil. Are you familiar with it? Have you guys heard about that pencil before? It looks like this. Generals makes one too that's called a Scriball. This one is actually made by Stabilo Schwan, and it's called a white all Stabilo pencil. This pencil will write on every surface that you can think of. Dry oil paint, dry acrylic, glass, metal. It wipes off, it's water soluble, and it's erasable, and there's not enough pigment in it to screw up your painting. So I can actually sketch on this colored surface, paint over it. There's not enough pigment in this pencil to mess it up. And then after the paint dries, I said, hey, wait a second. I made the snout on this too short or too long. I can actually sketch right on top of the dried acrylic again and come right back in over the top of it. It is a wonderful pencil to use anytime you're using any kind of a tinted ground at all. It even works on, tinted drawing paper. You're doing like a tinted drawing paper. In our Pacific Art League drawing class last weekend, we were doing flowers. Everybody brought in their own flowers. We were doing spring flowers in colored pencil. And so I sketched with the white pencil on a dark brown paper first. And so it was easier for me to see. It's very easy to erase, much easier to erase than graphite is. And it didn't, when I started bringing the colored pencil, it did not influence the color of the flowers or anything like that at all. Alrighty, so let's squeeze out some seahorse color here, so at least you can see what some of that's going to look like. And I've got a couple different colors here. I've got a pale pink, it's a tight knit pink actually, that's there. Burnt sienna, which I'm going to put a little bit down too. It's a reddish brown. Titanium buff, which is kind of an unbleached titanium. It's kind of a cream color. Warm gray. And I'm going to use a little bit of Payne's gray too. And I'm just using pea-sized dollops for the seahorse. I don't really need anything else, just that amount of paint is fine. And so we'll take a little bit of that tight knit buff and the pink too, and start laying in where that's going to be. Now this is nice when you start using these colors that have white mixed in them, they become semi-opaque, even completely opaque. Like titanium white is completely opaque. Burnt sienna is translucent, so it's almost, but not quite opaque. But by doing that, I'm coming back in over these colors that are translucent and transparent, and so it covers. It covers it up really, really well. Also, these seahorses do not have a perfectly smooth arc to their head. There's some of the body of the seahorse that sticks out a little bit. They have little spines on them. And so you want to paint them in there like that, to where you have a little bit. I'll put this a little closer here so you can see this. See the top of the seahorse, if you look at the edge of that, it's very rough right along the arch of that seahorse. It's not absolutely smooth. And as it comes down, there's places it becomes redder. There's places that it's so red, there might even be some raw sienna that I'll mix in with it later, but it becomes very reddish brown. It needs to be a little darker. I can add a little bit of Payne's gray to that to darken it. And there we go. And so that burnt sienna now is vibrating against that blue. You can see that really good already. You see how that pops against that light blue background? It almost looks orange. So it's really, really going to stand out and be very, very pronounced. And then I can go back in and do details on the coral. I can do little dots on the seahorse, all the little textures and everything as well. But right now, I'm just getting the underneath the main structure of the seahorse done. Okay, so we have a little bit. Now the area around the eye of the seahorse is very small. And so I have to have a really light touch on this. And that's good for a start. And let's see, it comes down more of that little creamy and the buff color down onto the snout a little bit. A little bit more red. And in this place too, I'm actually kind of dabbing it in places because that's giving some dimension to the paint. It'll actually stick up. I'll do it right in close. See how it's starting to stick up off the surface of the paint now? It's becoming very, very dimensional just by doing little dabs of color on this. It's actually starting to turn out pretty good so far. Now, as I've been talking to you, what I've been trying to show you something that's really important too is I've been talking to myself saying, okay, I think this needs a little bit more red, needs a little bit more black, white, whatever it is. So I'm talking with myself as I'm working on the painting. You need to kind of do that yourself when you're working too. Most of the time when we paint, we beat ourselves up. We say things in our head like, oh my God, that cloud looks like cauliflower, or like a potato. It doesn't look like this. It looks like it's going to fall on my head. Why am I doing this? I'm wasting my time. There's got to be an easier way to do this. I miss my favorite show. That kind of stuff. We talk to ourselves that way. We really do. And we beat ourselves up. We self-criticize ourselves. And that doesn't do you any good at all. I've done the exact same thing a gazillion different times. The best thing to do is have a conversation with your painting. Is basically saying, hey, you know what? I think this needs a little bit red, or what happens if I use some purple here, or what happens if I use some yellow there? Now you're having a conversation with your painting. And if you do that, the painting will talk to you. It will respond. It will come right back, and all of a sudden you're going to get, something's going to pop into your head saying, I think orange would look good there. Would look good there. Well, why did that happen? I didn't suggest it. Something told you to try orange, and that was your painting inside your head saying, this is what you should put, try it. So you have to learn to listen to that little voice that's in your head. Because it really will. I'm not crazy. Your painting will talk to you.
Jeff, how do you feel about a little bit after 2? How about we try a Q&A?
Sure, that's fine. I didn't think, I know when we first did this, I thought I'd have about 15 minutes. That's why I did a lot of the prep ahead of time, because I didn't know how much time I was going to have. So yeah, we can do that. We can have Q&A, and we move this now again.
So actually, one question that just came up is, could you give us the exact name of the white pencil and the name of a good eraser?
Sure. The white pencil is called a all stabilo pencil. It's made by Stabilo, Schwan Stabilo, SCHWAN, followed by the word Stabilo, STABILO. They come in lots of different colors. The best one is the white one. It has very little pigment in it, and so it's not going to dirty your painting. You can go ahead and you can sketch with it and wipe it off and paint over it, and it's not going to negatively influence your painting. So that's a really good pencil. I use it for almost all color work that I do. I use that pencil. I use it on sanded pastel paper before I lay out a pastel painting. It's a wonderful tool to have. You can come individually or you can buy them in boxes of 12. Usually what I'll do is I will get one box of 12 and that lasts me for quite a while. But if you do a lot of painting, you'll go through them fast. Now, as far as erasers go, a good general all-purpose eraser is a white vinyl eraser. There's lots of different good ones. Stadler Mars makes one that's called a white plastic eraser. Sanford makes one you've probably seen before that's called a magic rub eraser. Generals has one that's just called a soap eraser. And what a soap eraser is, it's just a big white vinyl eraser in the shape of a bar of soap. It's literally an oval like a bar of soap. There's even these guys. This is a big rectangular eraser, and this is simply, it's a white vinyl eraser, and it's simply called a moo eraser, as in cow. And they come two different kinds, this long rectangular version, and then there's a flatter square version as well that's there, and they're both really good white vinyl erasers. Kneaded erasers, I think, are okay for charcoal and sometimes for pastel, but most of the time, a good white vinyl eraser is all you're going to need. Now, if you do drawing, then there are different kinds of white vinyl erasers, and I go over that in my drawing class. There's the big ones like I just showed you. There are these little click erasers like this that you can get at the store that are called click erasers. There's also erasers that are called tough stuff erasers, which are little black-barreled one. The eraser is maybe a little bit bigger than a pencil lead. And then there's one that's called a Tombow Mono Zero eraser, which is a little teeny tiny thing. So here is the Sanford one that I showed you. You can see how big this is the tough stuff one. See how big the eraser is there. This is the Mono Zero one by Tombow. And yes, you have to squint to see how big the eraser point is because it is very tiny. This is my drawing eraser. So I don't erase with this to make corrections. I erase with it on purpose to lift out a highlight in the eyeball or fur or whatever it is. That's what I use that little tiny eraser for. So there are correcting erasers like this, but then there's also drawing erasers like that can help lift out a highlight. Say you wanted to do like the sea otter that's up on my shoulder back there on the wall. You have a sea otter that's got a white face and you're using white paper. So how do you do that? You lightly tone, and this was, in this case, it was charcoal, lightly tone the face and then lift out the hairs with the eraser. And that way you get all those nice little individual hairs using the eraser.
I didn't realize there were so many different kinds of erasers. So
yes,
I think you can give a talk on erasers next time.
Yeah. People keep asking me for a materials class, just talk about materials. I'd be glad to do that. I did that for more than 40 years actually in the arts, but the last 21 for university arts.
Well, we might have to recruit you for that.
So feel free to pick my brain if you have a question on materials. You have my email, so if you really have a question about a material like a certain paint, what paint did I use? I was using Golden today, but I also used some Grumbacher Academy. Those are both really good paints to play around with. The Grumbacher Academy is a decent acrylic and it doesn't cost a lot of money. Golden is a really high quality top end acrylic, and it's going to vary from color to color. It may be as little as $6 a tube, and then there's some that are going to be close to $20 a tube, depending on the color. Really depends on how often you paint.
So Jeff, do you want to give everyone your email if they have any follow-up questions about materials, about your class?
Yes, that's fine.
So your email, I'm going to put it into the chat. It's can you actually spell it through so I don't make a mistake? Yes,
it's Bramschreiber Jeff. So my last name, BRAMSCHREI, B as in boy, ER, Jeff, JEFF. It's all lowercase, and then the numbers 846, and then @Gmail.